Hi, I'm Coach Jamie Dreyer from Overhaul Training, and in this video, I'm going to show you how to release trigger points from a tight sternocleidomastoid muscle. But first, I want to make sure you all know what I'm talking about when I say sternocleidomastoid. This particular muscle has two divisions. The first, more superficial division, attaches at the top of the sternum, and if you press your fingers into your forehead, you can see it engage and pop up there. So it attaches here and runs around to behind the ear at the base of the skull to a spot called the mastoid process. The second, deeper division of muscle, if you find out where that first division was and you go a little bit to the outside of it, this one is the clavicular division, and it attaches at the clavicle, name kind of gives it away, and then runs up, back, and attaches to the same point at the mastoid process. So the name, sternocleidomastoid, makes sense when you know the bony landmarks. Now, what these two muscles do when they act as one is if you're contracting the muscle just on one side, it helps with cervical rotation. If both sides contract together, you've got cervical flexion. Makes sense, right? So why would this muscle be loaded with trigger points? Well, for me, the biggest culprit is the cell phone. Anytime I sit here on my cell phone chatting away, whether it's for minutes or every now and then an hour when I talk to my buddy overseas, I'm sitting here applying this little bit of pressure against my head, and I have a tendency of kind of cocking my head down a little bit. And in this position, there's a little bit of tension going through my sternocleidomastoid muscle. And day after day, week after week, this constant tension starts to lead to trigger points. So, what do I do about it? Excellent question. Here we go. The way I like to get started working on the trigger points is simply by using my two fingers and beginning with the lower sections of the muscle, right on where that attachment was to the sternum. Remember, you can kind of pop the head out a little bit and get it in there. So I like to loop around the muscle, squeeze it, roll it a little bit. When I find a tender spot, hang out there, keep the pressure on it, and eventually it relaxes and starts to feel better. And I work my way up as high as I can go up to the mastoid process. Then I come back down, I slide over and get to the clavicular division, which is deeper, so it takes a little bit more effort to get in there and around it. I need to even drop my head more to get more slack into the muscle, and do the same exact thing working my way up. Now, where I need to be careful is I've experimented using the pure wave on the lower fibers before, but because the vocal cords are so close, all that vibration really irritates the throat. So I just use my fingers on the lower portion, and the other thing I need to watch out for is as I go up higher, if you go ahead and take your fingers right up here between the sternocleidomastoid and your jaw, you should feel a pulse. That's your carotid artery. That's the other place that I really try to avoid putting the pure wave into, because it's just not terribly good to put a lot of force and pressure going through your vocal cords and your carotid artery. Obvious reasons, I hope. But this is where I love using it. I put the point stick on, and I like to come at the upper fibers where it's thicker and harder to grab with your fingers. This is where the pure wave is perfect. I like to get in here, and I come in straight on at one point, and I can hit some great trigger points that way, kind of working my way up. The other angle is coming from behind the muscle and kind of pushing forward and up as well. I can get some really great pressure in there. I can do that anywhere from like a minute, minute and a half, and that helps hit all the other spots that I have a hard time getting with my finger. Next up is the PNF stretches. It's fine to do this stretch standing, but I really prefer to do it seated. So, grab a seat, make sure I'm nice and comfortable sitting up tall, and then if I'm stretching the muscles on my left, I'm actually going to look to the left, because remember how I talked about how it wraps from here around? So the more I go to that side, the more the muscle has to lengthen. So I go as far as I can. And this is why I like to be seated, because otherwise you have a tendency of like twisting your whole body around because you want to go farther and farther. But it keeps the base of my spine anchored. I look as far to the left as I can. When I hit the end of my range, I then take my opposite hand and press it against my cheekbones, right? So I'm going to try and push a little farther into the stretch. And now from here, I take a deep breath, I hold it, and while I'm holding my breath, I'm going to rotate my head into my hand, but I'm stopping any movement. So the movement doesn't occur, the muscle just contracts. Doesn't have to be a very hard contraction. I hold it for 5 seconds. When I'm done, I relax the muscle, relax my breath, and then take a few deep breaths as I go farther into the stretch. And then I do the same thing about 3 to 5 times total. Take another big breath, hold it, contract for about 5 seconds, relax, exhale, inhale, and go farther into the stretch. And that's the process I like to use to release trigger points and get healthy length back into a tight sternocleidomastoid muscle. I think that was good. I hope that was good.